Devan Murugan. Devan, very good evening to you. You know, all this discussion about alcohol, I know you've been speaking to the industry players. There is some perhaps hope that the alcohol sales will be allowed again from an economic perspective. We see hospital admissions are in decline. Any sense at all from the industry? I mean, they had absolutely no notice when the second ban was put into place. Are they getting any inkling that things might be changing for the better?
Sally, I tell you, my sense is that it's not promising, and I'll tell you why. The industry has been given a slight tax breather for both August and September on the sin taxes that they're owed. Now, if they've given that breather for 2 months, and if you use that as a ballpoint to actually guess, the picture doesn't look great. The other thing, very quickly, is the fact that I was speaking to the Consol Glass CEO yesterday. These are guys that make the glass for the alcohol bottles and beers. And he says that they simply can't deal with the uncertainty because they can't switch on and switch off these furnaces randomly. They have to leave it on burning. And again, he says the uncertainty on whether or not this ban would be lifted is costing them billions.
Yeah, I think they need some sort of time frame just so that they can work towards it. Today in Parliament, Treasury was giving a briefing, and our Finance Minister, not mincing his words, very angry about what's going on with the PPE tenders, saying that they may well go back to the open tender system. Of course, just explain that to us, and how sure is that move? Is it still being discussed?
It's being considered one of the big points that were mentioned today by Treasury, and we all know they're calling for decisive, quick action. The country doesn't have such a great record on the decisive part when dealing with corruption. So Finance Minister Tito Mboweni is saying today, it appears that the Treasury's instructions on procurement of PPE were not followed. And what he says, he points out that department officials, procurement officers and accounting officers will have some explaining to do should it be confirmed that this indeed was the case. Treasury saying its instructions were quite tight and they were not followed. Then, point number 2, the Finance Minister saying he will approach provincial MECs to request the names of those who were awarded contracts, as well as the competitors who may have lost the bids. He wants a full explanation of why those competitors lost out, and that needs to be made public. And then some recommendations going forward. This is the big one. Treasury will lock an absolute price for all PPE and listed protective clothing procurement. And then officials will have to seek permission for any amount above that absolute price. Many of the commentators will argue that should have been done sooner. It's also considering ending what they call the emergency procurement phase of personal protective equipment, where much of the opportunities for the alleged corruption would have crept in. So what does this exactly mean? Well, now, lifting the emergency status of procurement would mean institutions will revert to an open procurement process, and perhaps that will tighten the lid. But again, Sally, it will depend on how effective these things really are in the bigger scheme of things.
Well, it's good to see that there's some very practical, immediate steps that can be taken to really get to the bottom of this, because that's what we all need to hear about. What exactly is going to be done? Indeed,
and what some of the MPs were questioning, they said, Finance Minister and DG, please give us timelines. And the Treasury committing today that they will go to these MECs, put these things forward, and come back after 10 days to find out which of those contracts or procurements were questionable.